what often gets overlooked is the importance of the editing process. Editing your work, giving yourself time to edit before you submit your papers or your assignments. So what do I mean by wordiness? Let's turn to your handout. There, it is written. A wordy essay does not necessarily violate the word limit of an assignment. Rather, it contains extraneous words that contribute nothing to the meaning and drain force from the essay's argument. Wordy writing is characteristic of a first draft, lacking direction and wandering around in search of meaning rather than setting out in orderly pursuit of it. You must revise and edit your work to make your arguments succinct and clear for your reader. You must write with your readership in mind. Now, there is a direct correlation between the time it takes me to read your work and your grade. That may sound a little cynical, but let me explain. If you write clearly and directly, I can understand and follow your paper. I will hence be able to understand what you're saying and mark faster. This, at this time of year, when I also have a big stack of papers to go through, makes me happy. Now, your happy professor is going to give you a better mark than an unhappy professor. Now, remember, wordiness interferes with direct communication of meaning. It will bog down your argument. So here's a simple one, redundance. We don't need to say the same thing twice. Okay? So, like I said, these are all fairly easy to identify, but yet they slip into our writing. Now, here's another pitfall. This often comes from being an overeager and overachieving high school student. When you're writing your papers for your teachers, what do they like to see in your essays and your writing? Sorry? Adjectives, everywhere. Freely writing is a sign of writing that likes writing, loves words, loves language, but often, again, is wordy, and we can be more direct. So I say, choose a well-chosen, unmodified word, often have more impact than modified words. So that means use strong descriptive nouns and, of course, very strong verbs to carry the meaning of your sentence. A strong verb is always stronger than a modified verb. Avoid baggy, cliched, and tentative constructions. You know what a cliche is? We use language habitually over and over again. What happens after a while? It drains its force. It's like, well, here's somebody who's not being very imaginative in their writing. Again, we're doing the best we can to write as directly as we can and simply as we can. There's this misconception that you need to be very convoluted in your prose. Because somehow, if you're convoluted in the way you write, your ideas will sound more impressive. That is not the case. That is a huge misconception. And that's when the irritability factor of your professor starts to get high. They don't understand what you're trying to say because it's convoluted. Strive to be clear and direct and as simple and as economical as possible when you write, and especially when you edit. Here is something that is crucial for writing clear, effective essays, clear, effective prose, using the active voice. The active voice. Do you know what I mean by the active voice? It's the opposite of the passive voice. The active voice is using strong, clear, active verbs rather than verbs that are buried in a sentence. The passive voice buries the verb and invariably and unnecessarily employs the verb to be. Active sentences locate the verb at the heart of the sentence. Every single sentence or clause, dependent or independent clause, follows this structure. This is what an English sentence looks like. Something, doing something, or doing something to something else. So the way we construct our sentences is important to the meaning and the emotion that we want to get. Okay, now here's another strategy for reducing wordiness. Is basically taking what you have and cutting. It's a simple thing. The larger grammatical units into smaller grammatical units without losing the sense of what it is you're trying to say. Cutting clauses to phrases, phrases to singular words. The values, the ideas, the notions, the emotions, the thesis will always come through more directly in a more direct economical sentence than in one that tries to convey this sense through words that do not need to be there. Now, I just have a few words of general advice, and you're not going to find these in any grammar books at all. These are sort of tricks of the trade, things that I've learned about editing. Simple. Look out for long sentences. Yeah? Especially the bunches of little words. Put a bunch of little words together. It probably means you're convoluting the sentence of the sentence, and very often it's a sign of poor predication, and usually a sign that you're using the passive voice, that you're not quite sure of what your verb is going to be. So what do? You dump it into the passive voice and hope nobody pays any attention to what you're trying to say in the first place. Read. How many of you do this? Do you read your work out loud? Watch out for repetition. There's another one. If you see a word repeated over and over and over again, what might be happening, this might be a sign that you're actually just repeating your ideas over and over again. You're not an essay should develop its argument, right, from beginning to end. Varying your diction is important. Not using the same word over and over again suggests to me that you're unimaginative, or, more importantly, that you're just repeating your ideas rather than developing your ideas. And last, and very important, try to resist the urge to be a brilliant stylist. It's very important to communicate as economically and as directly as you can, as plainly as you can. I can't emphasize that enough. Plain writing is always much better than writing that is trying to call attention to itself. Look how stylish I am. Look how stylish my prose is. I'm not saying that your writing isn't going to have its own style, but no matter what you do, this is what an English sentence is going to look like. A subject, a verb, and an object. Keep that in mind. Limit yourself. Think of writing maybe this phase in your career as an experiment, something that you need to be conscious about and work on and break down into its fundamental parts. And when you've mastered that, then your style will then develop. Your personal voice will develop. And your personal voice, who you are, is always going to come through much better in plain writing than in baggy, wordy writing, okay? Meaning is much more important than style. And that is really all I have to say.
I say you don't know, you say you don't know.